Hello there and welcome to another BoBeats synthesizer review, and here I have a new drum machine. It's called the Gentle Wham. I bought it myself from Herbs & Stones. They're a small indie company that makes some really interesting synthesizers. So in today's video I'm going to show you what it sounds like, its features, but also talk about the limitations, because there are some big limitations, and make no mistake, it's definitely not a drum machine for everyone, but it's definitely an interesting drum machine nevertheless. So we'll talk about some of these limitations later in today's video. So let's have a listen. So next up, let's do an overview of the Gentle Wham. So we have 5 voices that makes sounds and a 6th voice that you use to process external sounds. So the first voice, A, is primarily meant to be a kick drum. And we have control over drive, as well as the envelope generator for the pitch, as well as decay. Now the second voice is basically the same as the first, but it goes higher in pitch. So this is basically how low it goes, and we can drive the signal as well. So you can use the second voice as this sort of sappy sound, but you could also use it to layer in with the first voice. The third voice, however, is different and has this interesting thirst knob. So it's primarily meant for kind of snare-like and metallic type sounds. So let me show you here. Next up we have the D voice, which can be used for kicks, bass and metallic type tones. It has a lot of ring modulation going on here. I'm not the best at explaining it, but it sounds kind of interesting. So we have control here over the decay and pitch. And we can also blend here. So we get more metallic sound. And we have a pitch control for that as well. So we could, for example, just remove all the notes here and just turn it into something more, I don't know, percussive. But I do prefer it more as sort of a bass tone or kick tone. One thing to note is that it has a little bit of a click to the envelope. So sometimes when you play it as a bass, you do hear a little bit of an envelope click at the start of it. Let's see if I can reproduce it. So here you can hear the envelope clicking, and it's kind of nice. But it's also something that might stand out sometimes. When I ran it through my eurorack, for example, I could definitely hear this sort of clicking going on. And lastly, we have the E-voice, which makes kind of metallic noises, kind of hi-hat-like stuff. It's very rough, so here you can hear it. And we have pitch control and envelope control here. And then we have a filter section that is sweepable. So we have low pass and high pass. We got some resonance and a cutoff that is also controllable over CV. And really is when you start tweaking the filter that some of the magic comes in, like it's definitely a jam-friendly little drum machine. It's also quite limited. I'll talk more about that later, but I really like the tones you can get out of it. It's definitely like a techno or industrial-oriented drum machine. But now we're gonna talk about the F-voice here, or voice. It's a way to process audio. So first, we have to send a gate signal, and then we have to choose whether to set it to envelope or gate. I'll touch more about that later. And here we can control the envelope or length of the gate. And basically what it does is take incoming audio and it chops it up rhythmically. So what I'm gonna try and do is take something from my phone here, run it through the gentle Wham, and it gets processed through the filter and chopped up. So here I've loaded up some literal waves, and if I enable the track, we can hear them through the gentle Wham. And if I press play, so what the gentle Wham is doing here, and it's actually a quite unique feature that I haven't seen on that many drum machines, it's chopping up the incoming audio using the gate signal. So you can see here that I'm just controlling it using the Keystep Pro here. And the length here, increase the gate length. You can also set it to envelope, so you have the envelope here controlling it instead. It's not a huge difference, but it gives it a little, slightly different envelope basically. A little bit more gentle, I'd say, that the gate is more on and off. And here I have some city noises from Manhattan. So So it's definitely a different and sort of unique feature, and it can be quite a lot of fun just chopping up incoming audio. And if I can play just one more little demo here I'm chopping up just a tone from an oscillator, and I'm chopping it up through the gentle wham. So that was the different voices, and you can also use these outputs here for each of the voices, including the gate processor here. You can use these outputs to remove a sound from the main mix and process it. Actually, the most fun I've had with it was using it with my eurorack. So here's just a couple of examples, some demos, nothing fancy that I've done with this and my eurorack. Because of course, taking the sounds and processing them externally is a really big selling point, I think, of an analog drum machine like this. So I really like this drum machine for what it is, but there's also some limitations that you should be aware about. So firstly, there is no MIDI. The lack of MIDI is actually a big problem because it limits the drum machine's usability. Sure, you can trigger stuff via gates, but then you need to have something like the Arturia Beatstep Pro or the Keystep Pro here. So MIDI would actually mean that this product could reach a larger audience, which I think their products are good enough to be interesting to more people. So for a Mark II unit, I'd love to see some MIDI on it. Now the second limitation is the lack of CV control. So you have CV control over the cutoff, but that's it. And it's a little bit of a weird design decision because it feels like this semi-modular drum machine that you're supposed to use with eurorack gear, but there is not really that much you can do with it when you combine it with your eurorack. Sure, you can process it using your eurorack, but you can't modulate stuff using other eurorack modules, for example. So yeah, that's a little bit of a weird design decision given that it has the gates here to control it and no MIDI. So you're supposed to use it with something like the Keystep Pro, Beatstep Pro, or your eurorack, but there is not that much integration other than that. So it's in this like middle ground, definitely like a specialist type drum machine, and it sounds really cool for what it is. But MIDI and more CV control would have really elevated it. And here's a specific example. I would have loved to be able to control the pitch of this bass voice here using CV or MIDI or both. That's something that would have made it even more useful. I love this tone of it. I love the sound. But having MIDI or CV to control the pitch of it would have been nice. So just some honest feedback, maybe something to consider for a Mark II unit, because I think that the liquid foam and the gentle wham, basically Herbst & Stone's two products, they deserve an even wider audience. So making them more accessible using, say, MIDI could be a potentially good idea. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. So who is this drum machine for? Well, I think especially if you want like a Pulsar 23, but you can't afford it or don't want to wait that long, this is actually a good budget option. It's an interesting analog drum machine. It sounds really like industrial, very techno-oriented. It doesn't have the CV capabilities, of course, of the Pulsar, but it's reminiscent of it. Like there's a similar vibe to the sound, like this harsh kind of metallic sound. So maybe if you're looking at getting a Pulsar but don't want to spend the money or don't want to wait, this could be a really good option. So thank you for watching my review of the Herbs & Stones Gentle Wham. If you want to support future reviews like this, head over to patreon.com/BoBeats. My Patreon is the best way to support my work, and I actually need the support. I'm doing this full time, and I'm trying my best to cover interesting gear here on the channel and make interesting music tech videos. So if you want to and have the means, go and support my Patreon. It's linked down in the description. And as always, have a great day.